Please leave a comment where you are watching from. I've been on some bad dates in my life. Awkward silences, weird vibes, one guy who brought his mum to the bar. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for the night a guy literally ran at my car and punched my windshield with his bare hand because I said I didn't want to see him again. Let me back up. At this point in my life, I'd been out of the dating game for a while. I'd come out of a long-term relationship the year before and hadn't really been motivated to try again. My friends kept telling me to get back out there, but honestly, I just didn't feel like swiping through 900 guys holding fish in their profile pictures. Eventually, one night after a bottle of wine and a pep talk from my best friend, I made an OkCupid profile. I told myself I wasn't looking for anything serious, just someone to vibe with, maybe get back into the swing of dating again. That's when I matched with Mason. Mason was charming right from the start. Smart, a little sarcastic, but in a way that made me laugh. He had nice photos, some travel shots, a couple selfies, one of him at a concert. Nothing creepy or over-edited. We messaged for a few weeks, and he came across as the most normal guy I'd talked to on the app. When he asked me out for dinner, I figured why not. The first date was actually pretty good. We met at a mid-range Mexican spot downtown, public place, casual vibes. He was sweet, talkative, asked questions, and didn't once bring up his ex. He complimented my earrings, remembered what drink I said I liked in my profile, and didn't try anything weird when we said goodbye. I remember texting my friend afterward and saying something like, "Okay, he's not a serial killer. Might even go out again." She replied with a single word, progress. So a few nights later, we agreed to hang out again, this time at his place. Now, I want to be clear about something here. I wasn't planning on sleeping with him. I just wasn't ready, and we hadn't known each other that long. But the conversation had been good, and I liked the idea of seeing how he lived, whether he was clean, what he cooked, how he relaxed. You can learn a lot from someone's home. Well, lesson learned. From the second I stepped into Mason's apartment, I knew I'd made a mistake. The place reeked. It smelled like gym socks, expired milk, and something I couldn't quite place, like wet dog but spicier. I tried not to be rude, but my face betrayed me. "Sorry," he laughed. "Didn't have time to clean. Work's been nuts." Fair. I've had busy weeks too. I gave him the benefit of the doubt. But then I walked past his open bedroom door and spotted a stain on the pillow that was either blood, wine, or ketchup. None of those options made me feel better. His kitchen was somehow worse. Plates stacked in the sink, old takeout boxes on the counter, one of which had something furry growing inside it. The trash smelled like it had been fermenting for a week. I actually had to breathe through my mouth at one point. Still, I tried to be chill. Not everyone's a clean freak. Maybe he was just messy. But the more we talked, the more the cracks started showing. He offered me wine but didn't mention that the expensive bottle he pulled out had already been opened and was half full. It was also warm. No snacks, no dinner, no plan for food at all. When I asked about his job, he waved it off like it was nothing and started talking about a kid he had with an ex. He said it super casually like, "Yeah, I have a son, but I don't really see him." I asked why because, that's kind of a big deal. He shrugged. Not interested in being a dad right now. My ex was crazy anyway. That was it. That was his entire explanation. That's when something shifted in me. The mess, the wine, the apathy toward his kid. I just couldn't do it. The ick had arrived, and it was loud. I made up an excuse about needing to get up early, and said I should probably head out. He didn't argue. He walked me to the door and said, "Well, I had a good time. You'll message me, yeah?" I said, "Sure," just to avoid confrontation. But in my head, I was already deleting his number. I got to my car in the parking lot, breathed a sigh of relief, and turned on the engine. As I started reversing out of the space, I caught movement in my rearview mirror. Mason, running, straight at my car. I froze. For half a second, I thought he'd forgotten something. Maybe I'd dropped my wallet or phone or something. Then, wham, he punched my windshield. Full force. No hesitation. The sound was like a firecracker going off. A spiderweb of cracks burst across the glass. I screamed, slapped the gear into reverse and floored it. I barely avoided hitting a curb, heart racing, adrenaline flooding my body like a dam had burst. I looked in the mirror again. He was chasing my car. I couldn't believe what was happening. This guy, who had seemed so normal just a few hours earlier, had gone full psycho in under 5 minutes. I didn't stop driving until I hit a well-lit petrol station. I parked, shakily pulled out my phone, and called my mum. I was shaking so bad, I couldn't even explain what happened properly at first. She Ubered to me so she could drive me home. I was too rattled to trust myself behind the wheel. That ride back was dead silent except for her muttering, "What the actual F******" under her breath every few minutes. The next day, I filed a police report. I didn't have a dashcam or video proof, but I gave them his full name, address, the cracked windshield, and screenshots of our chats. They said they couldn't arrest him unless I wanted to pursue it legally and testify. I didn't. I just wanted him on record. They assured me they'd have a word, and that was good enough for me. Mason tried to text me 2 days later like nothing happened. "Hey, hope you got home okay. Had a great time the other night, smiley face." I didn't respond. Just blocked him on everything. To this day, I still don't understand what exactly triggered him. Maybe he felt rejected. Maybe he was always unhinged, and I just didn't notice because I was too busy trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. Either way, lesson learned, first dates should be in public. Always. Even second dates, if the first one didn't leave you 100% certain that the guy isn't hiding bodies in his freezer. I've always been a little socially awkward. Not painfully shy or anything, just the type of person who doesn't really do parties or clubs, who freezes up when a cute guy makes eye contact, and who definitely didn't get much dating experience in high school. So when one of my best friends convinced me to try online dating during a lonely winter break, I figured, sure, what's the worst that could happen? That's how I ended up on OkCupid, setting up a profile that said something like, tall, sarcastic, indie horror lover. Looking for someone who gets my jokes and doesn't immediately talk about their ex. Didn't expect much, but surprisingly, I got a few decent responses. One guy stood out. I'll call him Dylan. Dylan was shorter than me, which he mentioned right away. He was 5 feet 7 inches to my 6 feet 2 inches. Honestly, I liked that he brought it up. He made jokes about how he'd probably need a stool to kiss me. Kind of dorky, kind of cute. I liked that he wasn't trying too hard. We messaged for about 2 weeks, and everything seemed fine. Quirky but not red flag weird. We talked about our favorite horror movies, we both loved the gritty indie ones, and he said he was a decent cook. I told him I wasn't big on fancy dinners for first dates, and he offered to cook at his place instead. Something simple, pasta and wine, and then we could watch some obscure horror movies on his projector. I was hesitant about going to his apartment for a first date, but we set up a full safety plan. My friend knew his name, address, phone number. We even had a code word in case I needed her to fake an emergency. The night comes. I drive to Dylan's place. Apartment building's not too sketchy, but it's definitely lived in. He buzzes me up, opens the door, and he's smiling like a kid at Christmas. "Wow," he says. "You're even taller in person." "Yeah," I say. "And you're even shorter." He laughs. Ice equals broken. His apartment was messy. Not hoarder messy, but like a guy who lives on microwave meals and Reddit. Dishes in the sink. Posters all over the walls, mostly horror flicks and anime. The air smelled like weed and Febreze. He gives me a quick tour, making sure I see the bedroom a little too obviously. "Got a queen-sized bed," he says. "Should fit us both if you stay." I laugh it off like it's a joke. I'm hoping it is a joke. Then we head to the kitchen, and that's when I realize the cooking part of the night was a complete lie. He hadn't bought anything. No pasta. No sauce. Not even bread. All he had was 1 bottle of red wine, which he kept saying cost over $100. Like I was supposed to be impressed. I hadn't eaten since lunch, assuming he'd be cooking, so I was starving. He offered me some toast and a handful of stale chips. I accepted, begrudgingly, and all the while he's refilling my glass every time I take a sip. "Want more? You sure? It's expensive. Come on, don't let it go to waste." It hit me after the 3rd refill. He was trying to get me drunk. I mean, obviously. He kept pace with me, drinking heavily too, so part of me thought maybe he was just clueless, not predatory. But then he sat really close to me, leg brushing against mine, looking at me in a way that made my skin crawl just a little. I texted my friend our prearranged code word. She called 5 minutes later and nailed the performance. "There's been a break-in at the apartment," she said, just loud enough for Dylan to hear through the phone. "Can you come now?" I'm freaking out. "SH*T," I said. "I'm so sorry. I need to go." Dylan looked disappointed, but not angry. "You sure? The movie hasn't even started." "I know," I said. "But she's alone and kind of panicking." He nodded slowly, almost reluctantly, like he was deciding whether or not to believe me. "That sucks." I was really looking forward to this movie. Oh, I said. What are we watching? Then he pulled out a Serbian film. If you know, you know. If you don't, good. Keep it that way. It's not a horror movie. It's a trauma factory disguised as cinema. It's banned in like half the world for a reason. I told him, I've seen it. Not a fan. He scoffed, like I'd just told him I didn't like oxygen. You probably didn't understand it, he said. It's an allegory. You have to look deeper. No, I replied, trying to stay calm. I do understand it. I just don't want to watch people get tortured and assaulted for 2 hours, thanks. He got quiet. That cold, defensive silence. Then said, just stay a little longer. At least until your friend sorts her thing out. That's when my friend texted again, 40 minutes away. She had to drop off her sister. Car trouble. Whatever. So now I was stuck. 40 minutes. With Dylan. In a dimly lit apartment. With that movie playing. I sat on the far end of the couch. Dylan sat way too close. He started ranting about the film's themes, his voice getting lower, his breath getting heavier. I wasn't listening. I just kept checking the clock. About halfway in, the movie got to a part that made me physically nauseous. I looked over and saw Dylan breathing through his nose, eyes locked on the screen. Heavy. Loud. Focused. I shifted. Tried to make some space. He noticed. You okay? He asked. Yeah, I said, lying. Then he slid closer, until our thighs were touching. He reached for my leg. I froze. He put his hand on my upper thigh, fingers just barely brushing the inside. I shot up like the couch was on fire. I'm sorry, I've really gotta go. No, wait, he said, standing too. I thought you liked me. I don't even know you, I snapped. He looked stunned, genuinely surprised, like I'd just betrayed him. I spent money on this wine, he muttered. I thought you were into me. And I thought you knew what boundaries were, I said, grabbing my bag. I rushed to the door, praying it wasn't locked. As I turned the knob, I heard it, this horrible, high-pitched screech behind me. You're not leaving. I didn't turn around. I just yanked the door open and bolted down the hallway. I didn't stop until I was outside, standing on the pavement, heart pounding in my ears. No sign of him. I called my friend. She was around the corner. She picked me up, and I didn't say a word until I was in the passenger seat with the door shut. Then it hit me, like a delayed wave of revulsion. The vibe, the forced whine, the movie, the breathing. Everything had been a slow crawl towards something disgusting. I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't had an escape plan. But I don't want to know. Later that night, I blocked his number. Then his Instagram. Then his OkCupid profile. A few days later, I thought, no. Not enough. I called the police. I knew I couldn't press charges. He didn't technically assault me. He didn't even touch me that badly. But I still wanted his name on record. The officer I spoke to was surprisingly kind. Said they couldn't investigate based on what I told them, but they'd flag his name. Just in case. I was glad I did it. It gave me some peace. I didn't go on another date for almost 2 years. I told myself it was because I was busy, that I was focusing on school. But really? I just couldn't trust anyone again. Not easily. Not after that. Because the truth is, you never really know someone. Not from a dating profile. Not even after weeks of texts and late-night calls. The mask only slips when you're already inside. And some people, like Dylan, they wear very good masks. Back in 2017, I was 29, sitting in the cushiest job I'd ever had. I was the head of social media at a massive supermarket chain in the UK. Stable salary, pension plan, staff discounts, all the corporate perks. My LinkedIn looked shiny as hell, and on paper I was winning. But here's the thing, I hated it. I hated how my whole life revolved around Twitter algorithms and Instagram trends. I hated having to fake enthusiasm in meetings with suits who barely understood what I did. I hated the way our team had to walk on eggshells anytime someone on Facebook got offended by a sandwich ad. And most of all, I hated how I'd spent my 20s working overtime to climb a ladder I didn't even want to be on. I felt like I'd missed the point. All my friends were out traveling, partying, getting stories. Meanwhile, I was managing TikTok calendars and drafting posts about carrots. So one day, I walked into the office, typed up my resignation letter, and handed it in without flinching. My coworkers were stunned. One guy looked like he'd seen a ghost. Others were clearly eyeing my position. I didn't care. I was done. I had savings, no dependents, no real plan. And I wanted that freedom. That scary, exhilarating, aimless kind of freedom. I didn't know where I was headed. I just knew I was going somewhere. I'd always wanted to visit South America. The culture, the food, the energy, it pulled at me. Plus, I had a decent grade in GCSE Spanish, which, in hindsight, means jack all when you're trying to argue with a Colombian bank teller, but at the time it felt like enough. After some basic research, Colombia stood out. No, not because of the powder. I mean, yeah, I liked Narcos, but what sold me was the cheap cost of living, the football culture, and all the blogs that said Colombians were warm and welcoming. I booked a flight, prepaid 3 months' rent for a room in Bogota, bought some gear, rucksack, lightweight clothes, travel locks, you know the drill, and packed up my entire life into one giant leap of faith. The second I landed in Bogota, I felt it. The buzz, the chaos, the color, street vendors shouting over each other, car horns that never stopped, music blaring from open windows. It was messy, wild, and completely alive. I loved it. The first few weeks were like a dream. I ate everything, drank local beers, went to a couple of football matches. Most nights, I hit up this small bar near my hostel where I met Luis, a local guy who spoke decent English and had the chillest energy I'd ever seen. Luis became my unofficial tour guide. He taught me slang, showed me where to eat real empanadas, and gave me tips on where to travel next. One night over beers he goes, "You should go to Cali. Mucho más tranquilo." I'd heard of Cali. Known for salsa music, beautiful women, less touristy than Medellin, and supposedly safer than Bogota. Luis told me there was a big salsa festival coming up. Even said the girls there were muy cariñosas. I had no plans. Sounded like fate. I booked a cheap 1-hour flight and headed off to Cali. Cali had a totally different vibe. Smaller, less overwhelming, way more relaxed. I liked it immediately. People weren't in as much of a rush. The weather was warmer, the pace slower, and the food, somehow, even better. A few days after I arrived, the salsa festival started. The whole city lit up. Streets were packed, music played day and night, and bars were overflowing with locals and travelers all dancing like they were born with rhythm in their blood. Me? I danced like a drunk giraffe, but I wanted to learn. So one night, I went out to a popular salsa club, alone, and planted myself at the bar. Nursed a couple beers, trying to work up the nerve to ask someone to teach me a move or two. For the first hour, I got nothing but polite rejections and giggles. Then I saw her. Maria Eugenia. Yeah, she had 2 first names. I made a joke about it, she laughed, and from that moment we just clicked. She was gorgeous. Long curly hair, sharp cheekbones, deep brown eyes. But more than that, she was charming. Funny. Warm. She said she was studying at a local university, and her English was nearly flawless, though we kept switching between Spanish and English like some hybrid couple in a rom-com. We talked for hours. It was one of those nights where time disappears. At closing time, her friends came over to drag her away, but before she left, she gave me her number and told me to message her if I wanted a proper date. I was buzzing. We met up 2 days later at this little cafe she picked out. She showed up wearing this flowy red dress and minimal makeup, effortlessly stunning. We talked for a few hours, moved on to a late lunch, and eventually grabbed some beers at a quieter place. She seemed genuine. No red flags. No awkward energy. Nothing shady. So when she suggested we head back to her place to keep chatting, maybe watch something on Netflix, I didn't think twice. I mean, I'd just spent all day with her. I felt safe. She stopped at a shop to grab a couple bottles of beer. Paid in cash. I remember she walked out already sipping hers, handed me mine, and we started walking toward her apartment. And that's the last thing I remember. I woke up the next morning in my hotel room, still dressed, face down on my bed, with vomit on the sheets and the worst headache I've ever had in my life. My tongue felt dry and fuzzy, my stomach was on fire, and I had zero memory of the night before beyond the walk with Maria. At first, I thought I'd just gotten blackout drunk. I'd had a few heavy nights before, but nothing like this. I couldn't even remember getting back to the hotel. I sat up, slow as hell, feeling like the inside of my skull was going to explode. Then I noticed something. No phone. No wallet. I checked everywhere. Under the bed, in my rucksack, bathroom, closet, nothing. My heart started pounding. I went for my backup debit card, the one I'd stashed inside my passport as a just-in-case. Thank God it was still there. I pulled on some clothes, grabbed the backup card, and went out to find an ATM, figuring I'd just take out some cash and maybe replace my phone that day. I slid the card in, punched in my PIN, selected 50,000 pesos, about a tenner, and hit withdraw. Insufficient funds. Tried again. Same message. I told myself the ATM was just faulty. Tried another one. Same result. Then came the sinking feeling. I checked my balance. 4,122 pesos. That's about £1. I was supposed to have nearly 20,000 pounds saved. My entire travel budget. Gone. I felt my legs go weak. My throat closed up. I couldn't breathe. I raced to the nearest police station, stumbling through broken Spanish, trying to explain that I'd been drugged and robbed. When I told them the story, met a girl, had a beer, woke up missing everything, they just nodded. One officer said, Escopolamina. Scopolamine. I had never heard of it before. Apparently, it's a drug used in Colombia that turns people into zombies. Not literally, but close enough. It wipes your memory, makes you docile and obedient. They said it's often slipped into drinks. Victims stay conscious, answer questions, give up passwords, walk to ATMs, then wake up with no memory of what happened. The cops were matter-of-fact about it, like it happens all the time. I was stunned. They told me Maria probably wasn't even her real name, that she probably wasn't alone, that I'd likely been taken around the city to multiple shops and cash points while under the drug's effects, handing over everything. I asked if they could help me track her down. They shrugged. No proof, no ID, no cameras, no witnesses, they said. And then the kicker. You're lucky to be alive. Apparently, the dosage isn't always exact. A lot of tourists just don't wake up. They overdose and die in their sleep, bodies found in cheap hotel rooms a week later. I didn't know whether to be furious or grateful. When I finally got in touch with my bank, via police station Wi-Fi, they were horrible. Said I passed fraud checks, because the withdrawals were made with verbal confirmation. Told me I wasn't entitled to a refund because I'd authorized the transactions. Authorized? I didn't even remember them happening. Eventually, after weeks of emails and escalating the claim, I got a partial reimbursement, a couple £1,000. Not even close to what I'd lost. I tried hiring a lawyer in Colombia to pursue charges. That went nowhere. Police didn't care. No evidence. No real name. Just a gringo who got played. I lasted another 2 weeks in Colombia before calling it quits. My parents sent money to fly me home. I felt broken, ashamed, angry at myself, but also deep down relieved to be alive. That's the part that stuck with me. Yeah, I lost money. Yeah, I was stupid, but I could have died. That's not drama, that's just math. People die from scopolamine overdoses all the time. I just wasn't one of them. Looking back, I still think about Maria. Was that even her real name? Was she a student, or just pretending? Was she part of a whole operation, or just some freelance con artist? I'll never know. All I know is that one drink cost me nearly everything, and that when a city feels too good to be true, sometimes it is. Stay sharp out there. This happened during my first year at university, when I was still trying to find my footing in a new city, surrounded by new people, figuring out who I was. I'd been single for a while, not out of choice really, more because I'm painfully awkward and not the type to get out much. One of my best friends had finally convinced me to try online dating, and although I was nervous, I figured, hey, why not? We'd both agreed that OkCupid might be the safest bet. It had more filters, fewer unsolicited D***K pics, and you could actually talk to someone a while before deciding whether or not they were a creep. That felt like a win to me. So I made a profile, posted some decent selfies, wrote a bio that sounded clever, but not like I was trying too hard, and waited. At first, it was exactly what I expected. Guys who opened with "Hey sexy," or ones who made their entire personalities about going to the gym. But then I matched with this guy. I'll call him Liam. Liam was good-looking, like really good-looking. Tall, well-dressed, clean smile. The type of guy you'd expect to be full of himself, but weirdly, he wasn't. He seemed genuinely sweet. Said he recognized me from uni, though we didn't share any lectures. He struck up a conversation that didn't immediately feel like a weird interview or a sales pitch. Just natural. I remember being surprised at how quickly I relaxed with him. He wasn't like the others. We started texting regularly, late-night conversations that blurred into the early morning. I'd wake up, and he'd already sent a good morning message, never missing a day. After about a week or so of chatting, he asked me out for dinner. I agreed. I wanted to see if the person I'd been talking to for days was just as charming in person. Spoiler, he was. He pulled my chair out when we sat, held the door, complimented my outfit, but not in a sleazy way, just enough to make me smile without wanting to crawl into the floor. The conversation flowed easily. We talked about music, movies, what we were studying, future travel plans. I remember thinking, wow, I might have actually found a decent guy on a dating app. But as the night wore on, things started to shift. When he dropped me off at my uni dorm, he leaned in for a kiss. I wasn't ready, so I pulled back and gave him a hug instead. He kind of froze. His smile faltered, and I saw something flicker in his eyes, just for a second. Then he said something like, "Oh, okay," but the energy changed. That's when I noticed it. After that night, the messages didn't stop. If anything, they got more frequent. Morning, noon, night. It felt like I was dating him, even though I wasn't. He'd text me things like, "I miss you," or "wish you were here," and we'd literally met once. One night I didn't reply for a few hours because I was studying for an exam, and when I finally checked my phone, there were 12 missed calls and a string of messages like, "Where are you? Why aren't you answering? You said you liked me, but now you're ignoring me?" I thought we had something real. I remember sitting on my bed, just staring at the screen, heart thudding. It was like he'd flipped a switch. There was no in-between, no space. I hadn't even processed our first date, and he was already acting like I owed him something. I texted him back, something polite but clear like, "Hey, I've been busy with class, can you just chill a bit?" I thought maybe he just got overexcited or something. His response? He said he was in love with me. Just like that. In love. I didn't even know what to say. I felt this horrible mix of dread and secondhand embarrassment. Like, "No, Liam. We had one dinner. You do not love me. You don't even know me." I replied something along the lines of, "I don't know how you could think that. We barely know each other. You're coming on way too strong." That's when the threats started. Not direct threats at first. More like emotional blackmail. "If you don't talk to me, I don't know what I'll do. You're breaking my heart. Why would you do that? I need you. Please just say something." I stopped responding, and that pissed him off. Then came the rapid-fire barrage of texts. Some angry, some sad, some weirdly poetic and completely delusional. It was like reading the ramblings of someone with a split personality. "You said you cared about me. You think you can just ghost me like I'm trash? Don't make me come find you. You're just scared. I get it, but we belong together. You're mine." Each time I heard my phone buzz, my stomach flipped. I was alone in my dorm, far away from my closest friends, and I didn't want to tell my family what was going on because they'd just tell me to delete my apps and be more careful. I knew that already. That wasn't the point. Eventually, I just turned my phone off and cried myself to sleep. The next morning, I texted Liam one final time. "You're scaring me. Please stop. Delete my number. Don't contact me again." He didn't reply. For a few hours, anyway. Then he started calling again. 30 times. I turned my phone off again. The second I turned it back on, it lit up like a Christmas tree. He hadn't stopped trying. I blocked his number. For a while, that seemed to do the trick. A few days of peace passed, and I started to relax. Told myself maybe he'd gotten the message. Maybe he'd just had a moment and was moving on. Then he found me on Facebook. He started commenting on all my photos, tagging me in weird romantic posts, and writing creepy stuff on my wall like, "You look beautiful today. You still think about me, don't you? We could have had something amazing." At that point, I had lowered my privacy settings so people from uni could find me easily. Big mistake. I changed everything to private and blocked him immediately. But the damage felt done. A few people I'd met at uni saw the comments and started asking questions. Then he started emailing me. Long paragraphs about how I broke his heart, how he sees me around campus and it hurts, how I gave up on love too soon. And then he said this, "You're such a good person, but it's kind of messed up how you handled things." That line stuck with me, like I was the villain for setting boundaries. I didn't reply, just kept blocking. Then came the final straw. I'd gotten a part-time job at a little cafe in the town center. Towards the end of a shift one day, one of my co-workers said something casual like, "That guy's been sitting across the street for hours." I didn't even think of Liam at first. But when I asked what he looked like, my stomach sank. It was him. I stepped out the back and peeked through the alley. There he was, just sitting on the steps across the street, staring at the cafe. Not moving. Not on his phone. Just watching. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold my phone to call the police. The manager was an angel. She let me sit in the office and even stood outside to tell him the cops were on their way. After that, I finally filed a full report. Showed the police the screenshots, the call logs, the Facebook comments, everything. They told me they'd contact him directly, Just a warning, no arrest or anything, but enough to put him on record. That was the last time he ever contacted me. But not the last time I heard about him. About a year later, I was outside a pub having a smoke when this girl struck up a convo. We got to talking about dating horror stories, bonding through trauma, and she starts telling me about this guy who seemed perfect at first, but turned into a complete psycho after one date. Constant texts. Threats. Showing up places uninvited. My stomach dropped. I asked her what his name was. She said Liam. I just nodded and said, "Yeah, I know. Same thing happened to me." Her jaw hit the floor. We swapped details. Same patterns, same messages. The guy was still doing it. Still out there. I told her everything I did. Screenshot everything. Go to the police. Don't engage. Protect yourself. She was so grateful to talk to someone who understood. We kept in touch after that, and actually became good friends. Still are. That was the silver lining, I guess. I went through hell, but I helped someone else avoid it. Since then, nothing like that has ever happened again. I still date online, but I'm way more cautious. And now I know how to handle things if someone crosses a line. What stuck with me the most wasn't even the threats. It was how quickly things changed. How someone could go from a charming, respectful date to a walking red flag in under 48 hours. That, and how easily people can convince themselves they're in love with a fantasy they made up in their head. Liam never loved me. He didn't even know me. But for a while, he made me feel like I wasn't safe in my own skin. That's something I don't forgive, and I'll never forget. Back when I was 24, I was going through this weird, dry-ass patch in my dating life. It wasn't that I was shy or anything. I'd had girlfriends before, casual flings, the drill. But at that point in time, nothing was clicking. I was just striking out left and right, and my confidence had taken a bit of a beating. This was right before Tinder started blowing up. Like maybe a few months before everyone and their dog was swiping right. I didn't have the patience to wait it out. I was desperate. So I went the worst possible route, plentyoffish.com. Easily the jankiest, most soul-sucking dating site I've ever seen. The interface looked like something coded in 2002 by someone's cousin in his mom's basement. But hey, beggars can't be choosers, right? I figured, what the hell, maybe I'll get lucky. Instead, it was just pages and pages of tired, heartbroken divorcees airing out their trauma in their bios. Like full-on life stories in the About Me section. Most of them just wanted to feel loved again, or find someone to restore their faith in humanity. Which, don't get me wrong, I feel for them, I really do. Everyone deserves love. But as a 24-year-old guy still riding out the high of college parties and hookups, reading bios that sounded like therapy notes made me want to lie down in traffic. I was just about ready to quit when Tasha messaged me. She was my age, cute as hell, and had a personality that actually made me want to keep chatting. Like no red flags, no weird energy, no trauma dumps about her ex-husband or her custody battles. Just good vibes. We started talking daily, funny convos, similar tastes in music, even the same messed up sense of humor. The only catch. I was away at university, and she was back home. But it wasn't that far, just a few hours. I told her I'd be back in town for winter break in December, and she said she'd wait to meet until then. I liked that. It felt kinda old school. When December rolled around, we were still texting nonstop. Tasha said her parents were going to be out of town visiting family for the holidays, and she invited me over to her place for what would basically be our first real date. And yeah, I knew what that meant. She was being all casual about it. Movie, pizza, just chill. But when she mentioned the house would be empty, I figured the pizza wouldn't be the only thing getting eaten that night. I threw a couple condoms in my wallet and shaved like I was preparing for battle. When I got there, she opened the door looking even better than in her pics. Tight jeans, oversized hoodie, no makeup, just effortlessly hot. We hugged, and it was actually kind of sweet. The nerves were real, but it was that exciting type. The night went exactly how you'd want it to. Pizza, Netflix, and then one thing led to another. By the end of the night, we were tangled up in her bed like a pair of drunk noodles. No complaints. Everything was great. Until the next morning. I woke up a little earlier than her. The sun was leaking through the blinds, and she was still fast asleep beside me, all curled up in this peaceful little cocoon. Not to sound like a creep, but I just laid there for a bit, soaking in the wind. That little high you get after a date actually goes well. She was cute, the night was good, and I was feeling smug as hell. Then I heard the front door slam. Hard. Like someone walked in angry. Instantly, my entire body tensed. You know that electric jolt your brain does when it switches from sleep mode to full-on panic? That happened. I shot up like a corpse in a horror movie and started throwing on whatever clothes were within reach. I didn't need anyone to tell me. I just knew it wasn't her parents walking in. Something about the energy, the footsteps, the way the door slammed. It wasn't parental. It was territorial. Tasha woke up too, groggy and confused. I whispered, "Someone just came in," and her face went pale. Dead silent for a second. Then she whispered back, "Oh my God. Hide. Hide under the bed." My heart dropped, like completely evacuated my chest. I didn't have time to ask questions. I just dove under the bed like it was Normandy and kept still. Seconds later, the bedroom door opened. All I could see from my spot were a pair of men's shoes. Leather loafers. He walked in like he owned the place. Not like a dad checking on his daughter. Nah. This was a grown man with some serious confidence. Then he spoke. "Hey baby, did you miss me?" I thought I was going to puke. The way he said it, baby, it wasn't fatherly. And then they kissed. On the lips. Not a peck. A full kiss. I couldn't see it, but I could hear it. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't her dad. This wasn't a brother. This was a whole-ass grown man who thought he was her boyfriend. Or worse, sugar daddy. And I was under the bed. Naked, breathless, one sock on, hiding like a raccoon in someone's crawl space. I couldn't move. Every instinct told me to stay still or die. They talked for a minute. Him saying he missed her saying, "I didn't expect you home so soon," and other awkward stuff. She was trying to keep calm, but I could tell from her tone she was freaking out. Then he said something about needing a shower. The second I heard the water start running, I exploded out from under that bed like I was being born again. I scrambled to grab the rest of my clothes, whisper yelling like, "Tasha, what the actual FK is going on?" She was like, "I'm sorry, I didn't think he'd come back early. He wasn't supposed to be here, I didn't know." "Who is he?" She didn't answer. Didn't even acknowledge the question. Just kept apologizing and telling me to hurry before he got out. I didn't stick around for the Q&A session. I sprinted down the hallway toward the stairs just in time to hear the bathroom door creak open behind me. "Who the hell are you?" His voice was loud, angry, and dripping wet. I turned around. There he was, Greg. Maybe mid-40s, built like a gym rat, standing on the landing in nothing but a towel. We locked eyes for half a second. Just enough time for him to do the math. Then I ran. I don't mean like a jog. I mean full-blown Olympic sprinter. Oh my God, this man is going to kill me kind of running. He was behind me immediately. Screaming. Chasing. Towel flapping. At one point, I think the towel actually fell off because when I looked over my shoulder, the man was completely naked and still gaining on me. I made it to the front door, but it had one of those annoying locks you have to twist and pull. I fumbled with it just long enough for him to grab a fistful of my hoodie. For a second, I thought I was done. But adrenaline's a hell of a drug. I twisted out of his grip, yanked the door open, and bolted down the driveway barefoot. And yes, Greg chased me. Naked. Down his suburban driveway. I'm not even exaggerating when I say it was the single most terrifying moment of my entire life. Not just because I was afraid of getting punched. No, that would have been fine. I was afraid of getting my ass kicked by a full-grown naked man, which is a very different kind of trauma. I kept running. No direction, no plan. Just get anywhere that wasn't there. Eventually, I looked behind me, and he was gone. I guess he remembered he was naked in broad daylight and didn't want to risk a neighbor calling the cops. Probably smart, honestly. I didn't stop until I was at least 5 blocks away, hands on my knees, gasping like I'd just finished a marathon. My shirt was inside out. I had no socks. My phone was at like 3%. And all I could think was, I almost died. For Pizza Hut and bad sex. Later that day, I blocked Tasha on everything. No goodbye, no explanation. She tried texting me later. "I'm so sorry, please let me explain." I never replied. I didn't want an explanation. I already had all the answers I needed. I dodged a bullet. A big, sweaty, naked bullet named Greg. And I swear to God, sometimes I wonder what happened after I left. Did she keep doing that to other guys? Did anyone get caught? Get hurt? I don't know. All I know is that I got lucky. And I never used Plenty of Fish again. So this happened over 10 years ago, but still gets me nauseated when I think about it. I just started college and was on a full scholarship after working hard and completing many interviews and references to get this highly competitive scholarship. In one of my classes, there was a stunningly beautiful woman who came to me asking questions all the time about the course we're on, and we also end up being study partners in some group tasks. I was very much attracted to her, and she seemed to enjoy my company, so one day I asked her out for dinner date, and to my delight she accepted. Being a poor college kid, I did not have much money, but I did not want to go to a horrible chain restaurant, so I booked a restaurant in the next town that had decent reviews but hopefully was not overly expensive. The dinner was going well, we were having a very animated conversation, and the food was very good. The restaurant was almost empty, but another large group people on the other side of the restaurant. But I was a bit nervous on how much the bill will be, and did not want to get caught being not able to pay the bill, but alas, this was the least of my problems to come. In the restaurant, a group of people were on the other side of the restaurant, had one uncontrolled child approximate 3 or 4 years old running around unsupervised. The waitress was getting really upset with him, and the group as he was disturbing other tables, and pulling cutlery from other tables, and the parents didn't seem to be concerned with his behavior. But he wasn't really disturbing me as I was having a great time with my date, and I ignored the antics of the child. My date and I ordered dessert, and I excused myself to go to the bathroom. While in the bathroom, I could hear the small child making motorbike noises running around in the bathroom for a few seconds before exiting. I didn't see him as I was facing the urinal, and he had left by the time I turned around to wash my hands. I proceeded back to my table when dessert had just been served. During dessert, my date commented that the other table where the child belongs to seemed to be staring at us in a funny way. My back was to them, but again I was having a great time and did not care if another group was staring at us or not. After we finished dessert, I was surprised to see the restaurant lit up with the blue and red lights of a police car. A lady from the other table, in which I now know is the mother of the child, went out and met with the officers, and then led them to my table and pointed to me and stared, "Here is the man that assaulted my son." I was completely shocked. I told the child's mother that I had absolutely nothing to do with her son and never spoken or touched him. She told in the offices that I exposed myself to him while he was in the bathroom. She explained to the police that her son said to her, "I saw that man's wee," when I walked past their table from the bathroom. There were 2 police officers, one male, one female officer. The male officer led me outside for more questioning. Female stayed inside talking to the mother. I explained to the police that when I went to the bathroom, I heard the kid come into the bathroom for a few seconds, but I didn't see him, and he was gone by the time I washed my hands. I never spoke to him or talked to him or even looked at him in the bathroom. The police officer took notes, and the female officer came out and advised I was under arrest, and they will take me to the police station for further investigation. The mother out the front of restaurant is yelling at me that I was a pervert and I need to be locked up. My date made a brief statement to the police. She ended up paying and catching a cab home, and I got a free ride to the police station. At the police station, the officer advised that according to the mother, the child uses the word "we" as a euphemism for penis, and the mother have made a formal complaint that I exposed my penis to the child while I was in the bathroom. I gave my own statement advising that I was weeing in the bathroom. The mother was not there, and yes, the child must have seen my back whilst I was urinating, as that's what I was doing in the toilet at the time. There was no way he saw my penis in the few seconds when he ran in unsupervised and out. Nevertheless, the police charged me with indecent exposure to a child under 12. This being a small town, I got locked up for the weekend because there was no judge available to grant bail on the weekend. I rang my father explaining the situation, and he arranged a lawyer to appear with me on Monday. I basically had no sleep for 2.5 days in the lockup, and I was still wearing my restaurant clothes for my Monday court appearance. My lawyer petitioned the judge for the charges to be dropped, as if we locked up everyone who went to a public bathroom in the presence of someone under the age of 12, then we would have to lock up the whole country. The judge agreed, and the charges were dropped, and I could go home. But the damage had been done. My date told her girlfriends what happened, as if she was the victim of a horror date, and then her friends, who then told the whole college that I exposed myself to young children. The next day everyone was staring me in class, some people coming up to me, asking what happened. Some people no longer go near me or talk to me, as the rumor mill was on fire. My date never spoke to me again. 2 weeks later I had to front the college board and had to defend an honor code violation, as my scholarship was now in jeopardy. Though cleared, this incident hung like a dark cloud over my time in college, being a social outcast, and severely curtailed my social and professional life in my early 20s, not to mention having a hefty legal bill being sent to my parents. Story 10. Every time I think about it, I cringe so hard that my soul wants to leave my body. It reads like a bad omen, and makes me wonder why I asked someone overweight to pass my phone across the table in the dark instead of brushing up against some handsome young light-skinned cameraman type who has nothing but good intentions for me. But alas. But here I am, still around. This is how I wound up going on a Tinder date with someone who is now saved in my phone as Donotancer Penis Pic. You know where this is going, but trust me, it's worse than you think. I suppose it's off to a fairly ordinary start. 5 years of crucial decisions make or break me. I matched with this guy on Tinder, and at a glance, he looked promising, cute, nicely dressed in all of his photos that he appeared to be leading an orderly life. Over the course of several days, we messaged back and forth by chat app. He had a good sense and was charming too, even normal. Fast forward to SMS, and I met him on the phone. Not one word he said gave off any sense that this menace is dangerous and must be carefully watched out for. He had moved from California to my city for work, new and a bit worried but crazy about making friends. Not long after this, he left. It never occurred to me at all to question his motives, and he seemed quite anxious to meet me in person. Then why not give it a try? We had made plans to eat at some cool little restaurant downtown. On the day of our date, I arrived feeling hopeful yet cautious. I brushed myself up, selected a cute outfit, and went forward with expectations in hand. As soon as I walked in through the door, I saw him standing at the bar. In person, he was just as cute as his photos were, good, tall, nicely shaven head, a lovely smile. So far, everything seemed fine, or so I thought, and was badly jolted out of that state by what next happened. He seemed bitter by the time I finished sitting down. Not just your average, new kid on the block who has a different unrelated kind of hatred, but seething about life bitter. He detested this city and everyone in it. He wasted no time expressing this. Okay, new age folk. I tried to nod in sympathy, but quickly found that he didn't want or need my empathy. He just wanted to complain. About everything in general. I tried to steer the conversation toward lighter topics, but he wasn't interested. Within 20 minutes, he diverted our conversation to sex. Specifically, he started talking about blowjobs. And has anybody else ever noticed that given the chance, not once has anybody ever asked him to do one of these? I gaped in astonishment as he was so far gone that he even began to gripe about how people here are not open about sex. I'm sitting there thinking, man, we just met. Try something else instead of the blowjob manifesto. But, as anybody who has lived through the Great Watermelon Walk knows, I'm pretty good at being put in awkward positions at a cocktail party. So I just sat back and let him talk, waiting for him to change the subject. Spoiler alert, he didn't. It just got weirder from there. At one point, the waitress came around to our table again. Instead of just saying, thanks, or ordering another drink as anyone would do, he asked her to go to a party at his company. Like that, he just brought it up out of the blue, and without any lead-in. Say, do come to my party. I am hosting one at my house. She replied, no thank you. But it was a warm smile of refusal through her teeth. I almost saw the waitress rolling her eyes as she left. I wanted to crawl into a hole and disappear. The night was already mentally filed away under the rubric of never again by this time. I thought that I could at least finish my drink and leave with grace. I decided to show him a picture of my dog, hoping that might bring the conversation back to more positive subjects. After all, dogs are always safe conversational topics, aren't they? Wrong. Dead wrong. Pulling out my phone, I called up a photograph of my adorable golden retriever and waited for the standard, ah. What I got instead was a smirk. If we are going to share pictures, he teases, pulls out his cell phone, and reveals his own photograph. This time it was a picture of his penis. That tacit. Just like in fact he showed me a picture of his penis. Grandfathered away. In a bar. Just as if that were a routine thing on first dates. I was too stunned to know how to react. My brain just shut down. All I could manage was, wow. Okay. He took this as some sort of approval, and just grinned at me like he had done me a favor. Meanwhile, I was internally screaming. What was happening? Is this real at all? At this point, I knew I had to get out of there. I made up some excuse about being up early the next day, and asked for the check. When our cars were brought to us at the valet stand, I prayed mine would be the first to come. Thank the valet gods it was. I mumbled a quick thanks, have a nice night, and took off before he could say anything else. So I thought that was the end of it. But no. A couple of hours later I got a text from him. Apparently, I dropped my sweater on the way out, and he'd picked it up. Instead of just, offering to meet me so he could return it, he decided to hold my sweater hostage. His exact words, "If you want to see your sweater again, you'll have to spend time with me." Needless to say, I blocked him immediately and retitled him as Donotancer Penispic in my contacts, just in case he ever tried to reach out to me again. To this day I still cannot believe the course that night took. It started out so ordinary, and then turned a hard left into crazy town. But hey, at least I got a good story out of it. And if nothing else, it's a reminder that sometimes losing a sweater is a small price to pay for escaping a truly terrible date. Oh man, so here is some context. Back in 2003, I was a freshman in college living in Dallas, Texas. I, like many of the young people at the time, decided to check out this whole online dating thing that people had been telling me was super effective for older adults. So, I plug in some personal data, answer some questions, post a picture, and we're off to see the wizard. A few weeks into this little experience, I received a message from literally the most attractive woman I had seen within my pool of matches. We're talking a whole 10-mile radius. I honestly thought the profile was fake and some overweight guy named Greg was just catfishing me. But I figured, let's see how far this goes. Jokingly, I tell this woman that I can't wait to meet up with her, and if we hit it off, take her back to my place. And again, let me preface, I was being overtly forward because there was no way this woman was real. As expected, she responds by telling me how forward that is and how she couldn't believe I would say something like that to her. But for some unknown reason, I didn't let up. In fact, I actually purposely told her that I was being forward because I thought that she'd respond to that based on something she said in her profile. Nothing. No response from her for 4 to 5 days. So I figured I could close the book on Greg and move on to other fish in the sea. Friday hits and my inbox has 3 messages, all from this woman. And much to my surprise, she's included her phone number and requested I call her later that night. For further incentive, she has also included 2 scantily clad images for good measure. I mean, how could I not? I had already convinced myself I was being catfished. So I do what any 18-year-old boy on a dating site and a spare Friday night would do. I called her. We talked for literally hours. I explained that I was pretty sure her real name was Greg and that she lives in her parents' sunroom. She explains that she and her brother live together in a studio apartment and assured me that her name wasn't Greg. Of course, she then sends me several more scantily clad images to my email to assure me further. So there we are, talking, blabbering on, and she had me laughing so much and so loud my sides actually hurt. We were legitimately hitting it off. The noise becomes too much and eventually annoys the hell out of my roommate, so much that he comes into the room and tells me to just ask her out tomorrow so he can get some sleep. I apologize and tell her what's going on, and she agrees to see me the next night. We meet up at a local restaurant close to the downtown area. Fairly expensive, because I kind of want to make an impression. But it's like a family eating establishment casual attire. Not too fancy. I get there 15 minutes early, only to find out that she's already there. When I enter the restaurant, she's in a black dress. Not like a casual black dress, like a fairly revealing maxi cut. Everyone is already staring at her. Servers and restaurant goers alike. I'm wearing jeans and a button-up shirt. The hostess/waitress shows us to a table, and this girl decides that she needs to go to the bathroom before she sits down. So she wanders off. I ask the waitress how long that my date had been, and she tells me that she's been standing around for almost an hour. My date comes back to the table, and before even sitting down orders 2 the most expensive items on the menu, and assures the waitress that she ordered for both of us. She says, "I'm just being forward. I thought you'd appreciate that." The waitress looks at me. I just laughed and agreed. We sit there, in silence, until I ask her why she had been there for more than an hour. She dodged the question and deflected to talk about the pictures that she had sent me instead. At this point I'm a little confused, but I engage. One question after another, and she's asking me about my roommate and our living situation. I explain we are both working towards our degrees, and then naturally, I ask her about her living situation. She tells me that she and her brother basically live on top of one another, and then makes what I had mistakenly assumed was just an off-the-wall joke about how they sleep together. When I paused at her statement, I asked her to clarify. This is when our food shows up. She instantly gets defensive and starts berating me about judging her relationship with her brother. The poor server is still standing at the table holding my plate. I try and explain that I'm not judging her relationship. I feel like I must have just misunderstood her. Because what I had heard is that they have sex with each other. She loses her absolute mind. Or it was never there to begin with. Grabs the steak knife in front of her and jams it through the crotch of my jeans. Screams at the top of her lungs and runs, slams into the server, knocking her and my meal to the floor before she flees the restaurant. The server and I stare at each other. Neither of us able to comprehend what just happened, but also, I had a knife stuck in the seat of the chair with a nice new hole in my jeans. A fellow restaurant goer helped me retrieve the knife. I was a bit concerned I might have been cut, and the server and her boss chatted about the whole situation. They offered to comp my entire meal, but I paid for both. They replaced the one that was all over the ground, and my roommate and I ate like kings that night. Never heard from her again, but kept meeting online women for 11 years after. I was part of a group with the woman and several other people. I won't name what we did, but let's just say it was in the space of performing comedy. I didn't know her or several of the other people ahead of time, but as I got to know her, she turned out to be really funny and excellent performer at what we did. She was a real pro. I personally am drawn to competence and talent, so we started hanging out. This was right around the time between Christmas and New Year's, and we would plan some events for the whole group, knowing that we were the only 2 members in town, so it wasn't so obvious to either of us or anybody else what was happening. We went to a movie totally platonically. We went to a nice Asian fusion restaurant platonically, and I invited her over to my house to watch a movie platonically, but with the intention of checking things out. This was like 3 days before New Year's. I will say that things went well, and then it's the only time in my life I've actually done the cliched thing of going on a date, bringing that date home, and then having sex with that date. The afternoon of New Year's Eve, she texted me the innocent question, "What are you doing for New Year's?" Which I took as an essentially platonic question, just asking me what I'm doing. I had been invited weeks earlier to go to the New Year's Eve/housewarming party that my friend, female, was having at her new house. So I told her that's what my plans were. That became the first in a really long line of horrible text messages that realized I'd done the wrong thing with my penis, and I was being punished for it. Her position was that since she and I had had sex, my New Year's plans should be with her. Well, I was able to talk her off the ledge, but I didn't change my plans, and she managed to get herself disinvited before I was going to invite her to the same event. But I don't negotiate with terrorists, yada yada, so I didn't invite her. Things calmed down after that, after she realized I wasn't cheating on her, even though we were not in any kind of declared relationship. We were meeting at my house every week, and after we were done, everybody would take their stuff, put on their coats, and leave, and this one person would do all of that, walk out of the house, pretend to be leaving. Then when everybody was gone, she would come back inside, and we would do the funny bunny. That was pretty much our entire involvement. We didn't actually do anything socially together outside of my house, I think. Anyway, she was getting out of control, and I finally had to break it off with her, so I had a clear heart-to-heart compassionate conversation with her, and she seemed to understand, and then pretend like I didn't exist, and I mean like physically I didn't exist. She stopped speaking to me. She wouldn't even look at me at the times we had to have some interaction. And then, the texts. So, we're broken up. I'd elected to step away from the group that we were a part of, because I felt she was more important to the group than I was. So we really were not seeing each other at all anywhere, because I was also avoiding the community where we would perform. The texts she sent were vile. They were just horrible things about me that were not based on any specifics about me. Like, we didn't really spend that much time together, and really didn't know that much about each other, but she did that thing where she would just describe some other person she must have known, and then say I am built like that person. Every week or 2 I would get texts that she had figured it all out, and then roll off a conspiracy that most typically was about how I was cheating on her and with who and how I was doing it. I mean, I guess I was a little bit flattered that she thought I was just getting that much ass and have the luxury to make a girl like her just another piece of ass in my harem, despite my behaving in no way that would indicate I regarded her like that. She would make mistakes in logic so large that they were like a gotcha in a government hearing. Like, she accused me of dating her only to make a prior girl I had dated jealous. Even though that other girl broke it off with me, and was also completely unaware of the relationship I had going on because girl I was really seeing and I were actively keeping it a secret from everybody but ourselves. I continued to get texts for months. And I would respond to them, always trying to make things better, or explain something so she didn't feel so hurt, things like that. This Buddhist guy I was talking to in a little bar and explained the situation to, because I was being bombarded by texts as we were sitting there, pointed out to me that on some level I actually liked it, and I know he was right. I have enough training in related areas to know what he means. Basically, I was getting something out of it, or seeking to get something out of it, which was to first off be important to someone, secondly to try and preserve my good guy image, so that nobody ever in the world says something bad about me face with rolling eyes, and helps me keep my attention off of my own sense of loss and bereavement, not just about this relationship, but about all the relationships. As kindly and compassionately as I tried to treat her, I just knew I was not cut out to be one of those people that's abused by their partner verbally and or emotionally, and I wasn't really interested in that, so the Buddhist's advice was to simply stop responding to the texts. He rightly pointed out that I was just giving her what she wanted, so why should she stop? In this case, he was right. From that moment forward, I didn't respond to another text from her, and she stopped texting me about 3 days later or so. Her texts didn't change character at the end. She didn't acknowledge that I wasn't responding to her, and didn't seem to change tactics in response to this fact, but they just stopped. I never got another text from her ever. She's actually a really nice person, and very funny and talented, but also somewhat troubled by stuff from her past, to a slightly larger degree than most of us, so I do wish her well, and I've never wished her ill. It was absolutely my most mature handling of a breakup in my life, but also the worst breakup I had. So years back I decided to head up to my old town to surprise some friends and hang out. It was a Saturday and I had no plans, so I figured why not go surprise some buddies and chill for the weekend. I drove up to my friend's house to find they were all out dirt biking for a few hours, and I was going to have to wait till they got home. So I'm sitting on their porch smoking a cig while I decide how to best waste some time. I popped out my phone and started mindlessly swiping on Tinder. Suddenly, I match with this girl and her first message says, "Hey, I don't normally do this, but you're really cute. Let's hang out." Now, I'm the kind of guy who prefers to get to know someone before I immediately go out on a date with them. But I was bored and had a few hours to kill, plus what's the worst that could happen? Oh, how wrong I was. So this girl invites me out. I ask where she wants to meet, and she says she's currently drinking at a bar downtown. I think that's a little odd. It's 1 p.m. on a Saturday, and you're already out drinking? But then again, it is a college town, and it's probably not a big deal. Red flag number 1. So I hop in my truck and head downtown. I arrive and head in to meet her. A little nervous because I hardly know this person, but I'm optimistic. She spots me from across the room and comes over with 2 drinks in hand. She walks up, slams one of them while giving me the "wait just a second" sign with her finger, then slams the other drink and leaves her empty glasses at a random table. She then pulls me in and gives me a big hug and an even bigger kiss right on the lips like we knew each other or something. Red flag number 2. This girl is already pretty tipsy, and I haven't even had my first drink, and it's maybe 1 or 2 in the afternoon. Also, who immediately kisses someone they've never met. Again, I'm being optimistic, so I think maybe she's just having a good time and maybe I shouldn't overthink things. I tell myself to lighten up and just have fun. I don't normally party like this. Maybe I'll learn a lesson on how to let loose. So we chat for maybe 15 minutes. She explains she and her siblings have been at the casino all day, and they're out celebrating because they won like $30,000. Then she says, "Oh, speaking of my siblings," and walks me over to the bar to meet them. So we just met and now I'm being introduced to her family. It was weird. We walk over and her 4 sisters and their 4 significant others are all hanging out at the bar. They all half-heartedly say, "Hello," but I can tell they really don't care who I am. She then says she'll be right back, orders 2 drinks, slams one, and runs off to go dance to the next song, leaving me with her siblings. So I'm trying to make awkward small talk with these people, and starting to think maybe I should just go because I don't exactly want to hang out with this girl's family, and some red flags are starting to pile on. Then, one of the siblings walks over and asks the bartender for 2 shots. Oh cool, I think. This dude can see I'm feeling a little weird, and he's gonna give me a shot and try and make me feel a less awkward. Nope. The bartender passes him 2 shots. The sibling looks at me and says, "Yo, you with Tiffany?" "Yeah," I reply. He slams both drinks, slaps me on the back and says, "Good luck, buddy," and disappears off into the crowd. Red flag number 3. Well, fuck, I think. Maybe I need to reconsider what I'm doing here. As I'm trying to decide if I should go, some commotion breaks out on the dance floor. Apparently, Tiffany was dancing away, and some girl knocked her drink out of her hand on accident. Tiffany went into a drunken pushing/yelling match with this poor girl, and caused enough of a scene that the music literally stopped. There's lots of shouting and yelling, and my Tinder date is doing all of it. She's making a huge deal and throwing fists with this girl and her friends over a spilt drink, red goddamn flag number 4. All these drunk girls are now in a 5-person fist fight, defending their friend, while Tiffany is going drunk Hulk on all of them. At this point, I recognize it's my time to leave. So I did. I went straight out to the curb, lit up a smoke, and stood there trying to figure out how to spend the rest of the afternoon. As I'm doing this, they threw Tiffany out of the bar. I've never seen someone be physically thrown from a bar, but damn, that girl could really fly. 2 big bouncers straight up tossed her to the curb, while she's screaming and spitting at them and crying. At this point, it's like watching a car accident. I just couldn't look away. Her siblings come out seconds later and start yelling at her. "You always do this. We were just trying to have a good time, and you always get fucked up and ruin it. You have a drinking problem, and a slew of other things." Then, they say, "You're on your own tonight. Find your own ride home," and her siblings bail. Now at this point, Tiffany, whom I've talked to for pretty much 15 whole minutes, is a crying mess on the curb. I feel so bad for this girl. Obviously, she made some crappy choices that led her to this moment. But she's also a person who's having a really rough afternoon, and is now very alone and possibly too drunk to make better choices that will lead to her getting home safe. So, I decided to go talk to her and calm her down. She's still crying and having a rough time of it all. I offer to walk around downtown with her for a bit, so she can sober up and maybe we'll find her a cab or something. As we're walking, I can tell she's getting progressively more drunk. But she's obviously not drinking anything, so I'm guessing she probably slammed a few more drinks than I thought. Then she's puking all over the curb, and she's barely able to stand. After everything, she's still a person, and I decide there's no way I can put her in a cab when she can barely stand. Not to mention she's puking so much, the cab isn't going to let her go alone. I decide that I'll take her home, where her roommates or siblings or whoever can deal with her. Lucky for me, this town is small, and it only takes 15 minutes to get from one side to the other, so I'm sure it'll all be over soon. Nope. We get to my truck, and I help her in. I ask her where she lives, and she says something about the north side of town, but she was slurring her speech so bad I didn't really catch it. No problem, I think. I've lived on the north side too, and it's a small area. We'll figure it out. It takes maybe 10 minutes to get to the north side, and the whole time she's puking on my floor and out my window. She is fucked up. I'm already pretty irritated because I just wanted a nice afternoon out, but it'll all be over soon, and I'll never see her again, I think. Then she falls asleep. I pull up to the first neighborhood on the north side and start asking her where she lives. She's still asleep. I try and shake her awake. Nothing. She is full-on ragdoll passed out. So I pull into a Circle K, get her some water and a Gatorade and try to wake her up. Eventually she comes to, pukes some more and downs the water, add the Gatorade. I ask where she lives again, and she manages to point down the street before passing back out. So I'm driving up and down this neighborhood. At each new street, I'm shaking her awake, asking her where to go. She sometimes opens her eyes enough to look around, shake her head and fall back asleep. I drive around the north side for a full hour. She's woken up a few times, pointed at a few streets, puked more than once, but mostly slept while I'm driving around asking her where to go. Plus, she's pointed at multiple places that weren't even close together, so I wasn't even sure if she knew where we were. Finally, a full hour of this goes by. My truck is covered in puke, and she sits up, points to a house and says, "That one," and then proceeds to puke even more. Ick, how this girl even had this much vomit in her body. I am exhausted. I pull up to the house and park. Go around to her side, and it's pretty clear she's not going to be able to stand. So, I tell her to puke out what she can before I carry her inside. She does, and I throw her over my shoulder. We get to the door and I knock a few times, but no one answers. So I just let myself in. I figured at this point, I've dealt with this girl's drunken ass enough, and my patience is gone. Whatever siblings or roommates are there will surely be grateful I got her home safe, so who cares if I just let myself in. I get her to a couch and put her on her side. I find a pot from the kitchen and put it in front of her in case she's got to hurl again, as well as a glass of water and some Alka-Seltzer. Then I find a linen closet and get her set up with a blanket and a pillow. After that, I left and headed to my friend's house to tell them about the worst date I have ever had. Then, the next morning she calls me, absolutely infuriated. She's yelling at me, and frankly I'm completely confused. Finally she says, "Why the fuck would you leave me here of all places?" Me, dude. We're lucky I even found out where you lived. You were so plastered it took me an hour to even get you home. Her. But I don't live here. So it turns out that 2 years prior, she had a best friend and a fiancé. A week before her wedding, her best friend and her fiancé ran off together and eloped. She hasn't seen or spoken to them since. That was the home I apparently dropped her off at. They were out of town that night and came home the next day to find her passed out on their couch with puke everywhere. I imagine it was an eventful reunion. Anyway, she asks me to come take her home, and frankly, I was so done with that mess I declined. And that, my friends, is the story of why I decided to delete Tinder from my phone and never go on spontaneous dates again. To summarize this long story, I spontaneously met a girl for a date. She was plastered and ended up being thrown like a sack of potatoes out of the bar. She was ditched by her family, and the universe gave me the get this drunk girl home side quest that turned into an hour of vomit, tears, and frustration. This happened the year I turned 21, so taking her to a hospital was not my first thought since I was new to drinking and had no idea how to recognize alcohol poisoning too. She left her purse/keys/belongings at the bar because she didn't have time to get it when the bouncers threw her out. I was not aware of this till the phone call the next morning, but part of the reason she had called the next morning was to also ask for a ride downtown to get all her shit from the bar. 3. People don't lock their doors in small towns. Flagstaff, Arizona is a pretty small town. I never locked my door when I lived there. Small town people can confirm.